Mrs. Valerie Jarrett, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special session on the new US agenda. For the past 20 months, the world has watched the US election process intensively. President Obama's victory has inspired the interest and attention and enthusiasm of the world. This election symbolized a historical moment in American politics that will be remembered for generations to come, not only in the United States, but everywhere in the world. Today, it is with great pleasure that I introduce President Obama's senior advisor and assistant for Intergovernmental Relations and Public Liaison, Mrs. Valerie Jarrett. She has become, and she is here, President Obama's personal representative at this annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. And of course, you can imagine how much we are looking forward to your speech, because the US and the new administration has been mentioned so many times over the last 2 days. Mrs. Jarrett, you are a lawyer by training, but you are much more a civil servant by passion and interest. You spent a decade working in Chicago city politics before joining the Habitat company in 1995. For the past years, however, you have been fully immersed in the campaign and Mr. Obama's election as the President of the United States. You are a long-standing friend, influential advisor, and trusted confidant of President Obama and Mrs. Obama. Mrs. Jarrett has been described as the President's sounding board, and it has been said by others that when she speaks really with his voice. During the campaign, President Obama put it crisply, "I trust her completely." We are very pleased to have you with us here today. This is a very critical time in history. We collectively the US and the rest of the world face economic turmoil, security concerns, and environmental troubles. President Obama's election campaign established new models of stakeholder empowerment and collective organization. Therefore, Mrs. Jarrett, it's very appropriate that you talk here to a multi-stakeholder audience. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Mrs. Jarrett again to come the way from Washington to address us. We appreciate your participation and we welcome you cordially here in Davos.
Thank you, Professor Schwab, for that very kind introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and address the Economic Forum. I bring you greetings on behalf of our new President, Barack Obama. I still enjoy saying new President Barack Obama. Thank you. And he is encouraged by this forum that is dedicated to galvanizing global action on behalf of the common interests of people around the world. President Obama was deeply moved by the overwhelming response to his election from the people not just in the United States of America, but from the people around the world. From our jubilant yet peaceful celebration in Grant Park on November 4th, to the many celebrations that took place that night and subsequently around the world, leading up to the inauguration of our 44th president just last week. I know that you are all curious about what the results of our election mean to you, for the role of the United States in our global community, and about this new president. I plan to talk a bit about President Obama's vision for change and how we see this moment for our country and for the world. But to begin, let me offer some insight into my friend, Barack Obama. To know about President Obama, you should know something about where he comes from. You all know that he grew up in Hawaii, that he lived for a time as a child in Indonesia, that his father came from Kenya, and that his mother from the state of Kansas. But I want to talk about the place where he built his career, where he met his wife, Michelle, and began to raise his family, my hometown, Chicago. When many of you visit the United States, you often visit New York or Los Angeles or our nation's capital of Washington, D.C., but less often Chicago. I think knowing Chicago is essential to knowing about our new president. When many people think of Chicago, they think of Oprah or Michael Jordan. And believe me, I am Oprah's biggest fan. She was with us last week, and I still haven't gotten over having to give up my season tickets to the Bulls when I moved to Washington. But Chicago is really so much more. First and foremost, Chicago is in our nation's Midwest, in what we call America's heartland. And where we think of the Midwest, and when we think of it, we think of simple, universal values. People are hardworking and pragmatic, steady and reliable, just like our new president. Chicago is also incredibly diverse and filled with immigrants from all over the globe, some who arrived yesterday and some who have been there for centuries. Its diversity makes it better and stronger. It's a city that is vibrant and constantly reborn. Chicago is a city of opportunity. It remains a place where somebody can arrive with absolutely nothing but talent, drive, and a dream, and create for themselves a life for themselves and for their family. And finally, Chicago is a city of hope, a word that you've heard a great deal in the course of this campaign. A city carved out of the wilderness, a symbol to our nation of what we can build together if we're willing to work together. It's also where I first met President Obama and the First Lady. Nearly 2 decades ago, as I was aggressively recruiting Michelle then Robinson, a young, bright, highly talented lawyer, away from the private practice of law and into city government, where I worked with Mayor Richard Daley, Michelle came to see me with what was admittedly an unusual request. Michelle asked me to have dinner with her then fiancé to discuss the job. I agreed, and that's where I first met Barack Obama. I could tell right from the start that they were real partners, even though they were not yet married, and very much in love. I also learned very quickly that they share the same values and were both dedicated to making a difference in the world. He was a new graduate from Harvard Law, and he came from a family that was scattered all across the globe. Michelle was born in Chicago, with her roots there, and after they were married, the young couple decided to make Chicago their home. Chicago was a natural for the president. He had begun his career there, walking the streets as a community organizer, giving voice to the voiceless, and helping those most in need of a helping hand. And in so many ways, he embodies those timeless values that sum up the spirit of Chicago. In the president's inaugural address, he said, and I quote, "Our challenges may be new, the instruments with which we meet them may be new, but those values upon which our success depends, hard work, honesty, courage and fair play, tolerance and curiosity, loyalty and patriotism, these things are old. These things are true." The president also knows that there is strength in diversity because it's the essence of his own story. He appreciates and respects those from different backgrounds and cultures. In his extended family, you'll see relatives from every part of our nation and 4 continents. President Obama celebrates diversity, yet instinctively seeks common ground and builds on that common ground to make progress. He's also dedicated to ensuring that America remains the land of opportunity. That is what led him to become a community organizer, and that simple premise was what his presidential campaign for change was really all about. Since its founding, America has been a place that attracts people from distant shores seeking a better life. During the campaign, every step of the way, President Obama inspired people to believe that despite our troubled economic times and dangerous world, we could keep the United States the land of opportunity, and that once again the United States could renew its leadership in the world. Despite the burden of our times, President Obama believes strongly that this generation, like previous generations before it, can and will meet this challenge. Those challenges will be met by the very same spirit of hope that drove Barack Obama's improbable journey to the presidency. President Obama talks a lot about hope. He talks about it because he believes that it is hope that will lead us to solve the problems of the 21st century. Not blind optimism, but rather a hard-earned hope born out of realism and a deep understanding of how we have overcome so much in the past. Hope that leaves us firm in the knowledge that we can create a brighter tomorrow. So those are the values that motivate our new president. That is who he is, and that is the man that I met so many years ago. The values that have brought him this far, from the home of a single mother in Hawaii to the White House. And those are the values that will guide how he faces the challenges of our time. But if I were to sum up who Barack Obama is and how he plans to meet this moment in one word, that word would be responsibility. Responsibility to each other, to our families, to our communities, to our country, and yes, to the world. Last week, standing on the steps of the Capitol, President Obama laid out how he sees this moment. This is what he said. What is required of us now is a new era of responsibility, a recognition on the part of every American that we have a duty to ourselves, to our nation and the world. Duties that we do not grudgingly accept, but rather seize gladly. Firm in the knowledge that there is nothing so satisfying and to the spirit, so defining to our character, than giving us all a difficult task. The price and the promise of citizenship. The responsibility of citizenship applies to us all, not just to individuals, but also to government. And not just to government, but also to corporations and financial institutions and philanthropic organizations and schools and parents and students and each and every person who has the power to help rebuild a better world. I know that President Obama of this era believes that responsibility applies not just to the United States, but to the world. The challenges we face in the 21st century, be them terrorism, nuclear proliferation, climate change, poverty, and the pursuit of peace, are global. So are the roots of our current economic crisis. Our challenge today is to ask ourselves what more we can do together, as all of our fortunes are inextricably linked. As we work together here in Davos, this must be an effort that crosses traditional lines and engages all sectors of our society, whether they are government, business, cultural, or not-for-profit. I was heartened to learn, Klaus, that in your opening remarks you highlighted the importance of developing a holistic strategy. My goal in the new administration is to engage all of the stakeholders, everyone who can help us meet the challenge of the 21st century, and ensure that we work together. And as Klaus and I spoke right before the session, he used the word stakeholders, and so I know that we're speaking the same language. We are engaging state and local government, grassroots activists, foundations and other not-for-profits, business, cultural and community institutions. We are looking for innovative solutions, new tools to solve new problems based on timeless and universal values. That's why I'm here with you today. Because here in Davos, you are rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. In the White House, we're focused on the economy. The President believes that this crisis did not happen solely by happenstance or turn in the business cycle. Instead, we arrived here because of an era of profound irresponsibility by both government and business, and both in the United States and around the globe. The result has been a loss of trust and confidence in our economy and in our financial markets. We need to rebuild that trust. It begins with committing ourselves to transparency, respect, and accountability. President Obama began his administration by setting new standards in those areas, not only because ethical reform and transparency have been hallmarks for his entire career, but because they are essential to effective governance. He won't stop there. Financial regulatory reform is one of the top legislative priorities of the Obama administration. A lack of oversight and accountability helped lead us to this place, and the President is committed to strong, common-sense 21st century rules of the road to protect investors and consumers alike. The United States cannot be alone in this effort. Our economy is global, our crisis is global, our solutions must be global. Our administration will be partners with you to establish a workable international framework that can help stabilize our global economy and rebuild the trust we need to continue the economic progress of the 21st century. To get us out of our current crisis and spur economic growth, President Obama is also committed to taking aggressive and extraordinary action. That is why he has made working with Congress to pass the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act a first priority, in order to immediately jumpstart job creation and lay the foundation for stable, long-term economic growth. The recovery plan will put money in the pockets of American workers, create and save millions of new jobs, and invest in crucial areas such as health care, education, energy independence, and a new infrastructure. Yesterday, the President met with several of America's leading business executives who represent over 100 companies who signed a letter supporting the recovery plan. Companies such as IBM, Xerox, Aetna, Citibank, and Google. It was a sober meeting because the companies and their workers are going through trying times. They understand that it will take all of us to work on this challenge. They know that the President's recovery plan is an important step towards creating a favorable climate in which workers can prosper, businesses can thrive, and our economy can grow again. Last night, the House of Representatives voted in favor of the plan, a key step in the process. As countries around the world join the U.S. in taking unprecedented actions to jumpstart their economies, global economic coordination becomes all the more crucial. This coordination will be important now as we act boldly and aggressively to pull ourselves out of this crisis, and in the future as we all take steps to restore fiscal responsibility and return to a sustainable economic path. We will continue to be your partners in this effort. Together we can and we must enter this new era of global financial responsibility. Our security depends on our cooperation as well, because in the 21st century, our security is shared. We know the threats from global terrorist networks to the spread of deadly weapons, yet we also know that embedded in this time of danger is the promise of a new day, if we have the courage and the commitment to work together. We Americans are hopeful that we can, as the President said in his inaugural address, do our part to help for a new era of peace. Let me give you some evidence of how President Obama seeks to have America lead again. The United States is committed to more active diplomacy under President Obama. He has already taken concrete steps in his first few days in office. He's named Senator Clinton, now Secretary Clinton, the Secretary of State. Ambassador Richard Holbrooke and veteran diplomat George Mitchell as special envoys. Mr. Mitchell has already traveled to the Middle East and is demonstrating active engagement early in the Obama administration, and Ambassador Holbrooke will travel next week. President Obama will work to support lasting peace between Israelis, the Palestinians, and the Arab world. He believes that all of us must do so as well. The European nation, the United Nations, Russia, and those who are present here in Davos. The President believes that the world has a responsibility to stand up to extremists in all forms, to terrorism, and to speak out broadly for values that demonstrate democracy, dignity, respect, and opportunity. Yet President Obama realizes that development will be important to usher in a new era of peace, and he intends to have the United States play its role in this arena. In this century, it is not simply a moral obligation, it is a security imperative. We know that poverty can sow conflict and extremism, We know that disease spreads across borders. All of us must do our part to help fight poverty, to continue the fight against diseases such as HIV and AIDS and malaria, and to help nations develop their own capacity to govern, support the rule of law, fight corruption, and provide opportunity for their people. Finally, I want to talk about one challenge in particular that threatens us all. That's global climate change. If left unchecked, global change will create violent conflict, torrential storms, shrinking coastlines, and irreversible catastrophe. Instead of sitting on the sidelines, President Obama has made it clear that the U.S. is ready to lead the global effort to combat climate change. To signal his administration's commitment to seeking global solutions to this crisis, President Obama and Secretary Clinton have named Todd Stern the U.S. climate envoy. The President has made it clear that we Americans will do more to develop new energy, raise fuel efficiency standards, and address greenhouse gas emissions. And we will also ask more of other nations in the negotiations to come. This must be an effort that engages all of us in our various sectors, and in all our creativity and dedication must be unleashed to solve these problems of our times. So, as you can see, from our economy to our security, the many problems of the 21st century, under the leadership of President Barack Obama, America stands ready to lead again. We have begun to act. A new era of responsibility is here. The question is, will we meet this challenge together? We stand ready to work with you as partners, to listen to you first, even and especially when we disagree. We will act with the knowledge that our fates are intertwined. We will ask more of you and more of ourselves in the coming days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Let me leave you by repeating the charge that President Obama has given to the American people and to the world. He said, quote, "We intend to meet this moment in history with the same spirit and hard work and sense of hope on behalf of a common purpose that has guided America and our friends and our allies around the world through many dark days. We ask you to join us in this endeavor as we seek the promise of a brighter day." Thank you very much.
I want to thank Mrs. Jarrett for this message, which is so important. And I have to say, it was very interesting to listen to you, what President Barack Obama motivates, because that's, I think, the driving force for action. And you described the 4 dimensions of the spirit of Chicago. And I have to tell you, we always here speak about the spirit of Davos. Now, and I was very pleased when I take the 4 dimensions of the spirit of Chicago. I have to say they correspond exactly to the spirit of Davos.
How about that?
Because no, I can prove. If you take first universal values, I think we have one value in common. I'm very often asked, of course, there's this expression coined of the Davos man or woman. What is a Davos man and woman? And I say a Davos man and woman is a person who is concerned about the state of the world and committed to improve it. That's the first dimension. The second dimension which you mentioned was diversity. And I think you don't find a place where you have more a spirit of global togetherness, as you have it here in the room with 90 different nationalities assembled. Now the third dimension which you elaborated on was to be vibrant and creative. You have here business leaders, politicians, but they all come here in reality to learn but to be creative, to come out with some added value in terms of their thinking. And finally, you said hope. And I think this is something which has also characterized our sessions yesterday and today. We know we are in a difficult crisis, but we cannot just give up. And we have to have hope for our future. And I think here, President Barack Obama is a very big symbol for hope of not only of the American people, but for the whole world. And I'm very happy to hear from you as his voice, his commitment to global cooperation. So I want to thank you again for joining us here, and please transmit our best respects and regards to the President.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and Klaus and I were speaking earlier about having an ongoing relationship and working together in New York and in the regional conferences and making sure that we take advantage of this extraordinary network that you have. So today is my first day, but I hope that there will be many more opportunities for us to work together in the future. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.